Welcome to the Alcohol Minimalist podcast. I'm your host, Molly Watts. If you want to change your drinking habits and create a peaceful relationship with alcohol, you're in the right place. This podcast explores the strategies I use to overcome a lifetime of family alcohol abuse, more than 30 years of anxiety and worry about my own drinking, and what felt like an unbreakable daily drinking habit. Becoming an alcohol minimalist means removing excess alcohol from your life so it doesn't remove you from life. It means being able to take alcohol or leave it without feeling deprived. It means to live peacefully, being able to enjoy a glass of wine without feeling guilty and without needing to finish the bottle. With science on our side, we'll shatter your past patterns and eliminate your excuses. Changing your relationship with alcohol is possible. I'm here to help you do it. Let's start now. Well, hello and welcome or welcome back to the Alcohol Minimalist podcast with me, your host, Molly Watts, coming to you from, the rains are a-coming. They're coming today, folks, and it's actually really good news. We have been in this really smoky, hazy weather pattern for about 10 days now here. And we actually had such poor air quality here in Portland yesterday that people were advised to not go outside. So we need the rain. I raise my hand. I admit it. We need it and I want it. And I hope that it scours out all this nasty smoke and we are back into some clean air. I'll take clean air, clean, wet air over anything. So welcome to the show. This week is a very special podcast, something that I have thought about doing for a while and didn't and just haven't, but I've really wanted to. I am going to be sharing with you two of my members of my Alcohol Minimalist Facebook group, and they're people that have read the book, listened to the podcast, and really just been doing the work. And I wanted to share what has happened for them with you because I think it's important to hear from people that may be like you or have experienced stuff like you that give you some hope that it's not just I'm not just some special snowflake. I say that you can do this too. You can create a peaceful relationship with alcohol. You can figure this out if you just keep going. And that's exactly what both Bruce and Julie have done. I call Julie and Bruce they don't know each other except from being inside the group, and they both know that they are Midwesterners, so they have conversations I think in the group regarding that. And so this is my Midwest my Midwest podcast group, and so here are some stories that are some in their perspectives. First, you're going to hear from Julie, and then you're going to hear from Bruce. And I just hope that these listener stories help you feel inspired to start making changes and to start creating your peaceful relationship with alcohol. Thanks for listening. Hey, Julie, thank you so much for being here on the podcast today. I just appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate you being willing to share kind of what's been working for you, your story. Like I told you, this idea kind of has been inspired. I've thought about it for a while, and I really wanted people to hear from people other than me, right? That say, and not just experts, but people that have actually been doing this work because so many people are stuck in this idea that they just cannot change their drinking habits and they cannot figure out how to put it all together. And so there are people that are here that have been working, even not doing coaching programs with me, just they've read the book, they've done the work themselves, they listen to the podcast, and they're getting these results. So I wanted to share their stories. We heard from I tell you, these are my Midwest crew. This is my Midwest gang. There's another in this episode. You'll hear from Bruce as well. And this morning we are talking to Julie. So, hey, Julie, how are you?
Good morning, Molly. I'm doing well. Good morning from sunny, crisp Ohio.
Sunny, crisp Ohio, which is, I mean, technically, I know. See, this is why I always have to ask you, like, which time zone are you in? Because to me, you're the Midwest, but you're sort of the East too, right?
Correct. Definitely an EST gal.
Yeah, yes. So tell me a little bit about kind of what was going on in your life or what your drinking was looking like when you found me and kind of what inspired you to make a change? What were you wanting to do?
Well, I actually found you in January of 21. I was
Mhm,
just, the typical beginning of the year, thinking about where I was at. And, the first year of the pandemic, I had been drinking wine daily and it had gotten
mhm,
to be much more of a habit than I ever had. And I found your podcast online, and it really resonated with me. But I didn't take action until
mhm,
August,
mhm,
and I can't even remember what tripped me to say let's do it, but something did.
mhm,
And what I had been doing is I had been during 2020 basically having a drink of wine of night that glass of wine of night that kind of morphed into a couple of glasses, and that
mhm,
was definitely out of my normal habit.
mhm.
And I really wanted to press a reset button. So I found your podcast, and I thought this really sounded like a good fit for me.
Mhm,
Hmm.
mhm. And then
And
you joined the Facebook group?
right, right. I think almost immediately I started listening to a few podcasts, and I really was hooked. It just felt like a really safe place, and everything you were saying about, um, you know, we're not broken, you're not trying to be fixed, and that really finding balance in life. And that was what I was looking for. And
Mhm,
figuring out what would be a good place for me, to keep, a healthy relationship with alcohol, but to get back to a more reasonable consumption.
mhm. Yeah.
Really.
So tell me about that now. So now where are you with your peaceful relationship with alcohol? What does that look like for you now?
I don't want to say it's effortless. I mean, it's been a little over a year journey for me, but it feels much more, it's natural.
Uh-huh.
I, you know, Once I started listening to your podcast, I was like, I wanted more, and I was working from home, and I often would, take a walk at lunch and listen to a podcast. I was looking
Uh,
forward to every podcast that came out on Wednesday. And you had so many good tools on your podcast. You had referred to Atomic Habits, which was a book I had read. You also referred to Elizabeth Benton's book. So I,
uh-huh.
started reading that. And then also at the time it was called Cutback Coach, I believe. And then
Yep.
now
Hmm.
it's Sunnyside.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that seems like a good, tracking tool. They had a free trial. So I started that. So, those tools became a part of my daily life. And I think once I started using those tools, and that kind of just gave me inspiration, it made me feel good. I could see some benefits. I could see, I was making changes. And so now that's what my life is like. I've kind of, after the course of the year, figured out what's a good plan for me most weeks, and
Hmm.
how much do I want, how many now I'm just drinking beer, and how much do I want in my life. So um, it feels like I've figured out a good plan over the course of the year for me.
Yeah. And I think you're one of my non-alcoholic beer connoisseurs, are you not?
Oh, yes, yes, that's a big part of it. Yeah. And that was an interesting thing too, because I wasn't sure how I felt about that. I'm like, I mean, of course, we had
Right.
all the stigma from, the 80s, and, the not so great, NA beers. And then I really wasn't sure how that fit into my world. But, again, over the course of last year, initially I think I, kind of started drinking, more seltzer waters. And then I tried out the different alcohol-free beers. And I was like, well, these are very nice. And I'm definitely someone who likes the taste of beer.
Hmm.
I think as you have mentioned. So I found a couple I liked. Athletic Brewing and Brewdog worked great for me. So those became part of my routine too.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, even where you live, you've been able to find those when you go out sometimes too, right? You've seen them on tap and stuff, I think, if I remember correctly.
Definitely at my local hangouts, most of them I've seen have both of those types of beers. So that's
Yeah.
it's really neat to see.
while that's like a tactic, it's a tool, using
Hmm.
non-alcoholic beer, but kind of what you mentioned though, you had some mindset work to do around like, what that looked like for you. So, in terms of what's resonated most with you in terms of doing this work, was the tools or have you done a lot of work on your thoughts too?
That's a really good point. It has been a ton of thought work. And throughout my life, I've done different thought work, but you just brought out, again, you were coming in from a different angle with the thought work and reinforcing it and applying it to how I approached my relationship with alcohol. And, I think alcohol, and especially during the pandemic, became somewhat of a reward. And I'm not really sure a reward for what. Was
Yeah.
it a reward for getting through each day of the pandemic? Um, but I think it became very automatic,
Hmm.
instead of pausing and thinking, I'm going to have a drink, I was just automatically doing it. So the thought work became, really thinking about why am I wanting this drink?
Hmm.
And changing and pausing. I think, like again, you have mentioned, to pause when you're thinking about having a drink, not to react, like not just saying, oh, something went wrong in my day, or my car broke down, or I have another house issue, I need a drink. Instead, it's like taking a step back. And I think, and that's been huge, and I can apply it to other areas of my life that you know, I, I tackle those problems more head on instead of, I want to say, masking them with a drink,
No, no, I think that's yeah. I mean,
right?
buffering and numbing
Buffering
is
it.
something that we do with alcohol, right? We think that,
Right.
and I appreciate you saying that because I think you brought up like the car breaking down and something going wrong with the house. Like when we think like that, right? Then we just take a step back and we pause. Okay, but is drinking a glass of wine going to solve the fact that my car broke down? Right? It is not. It
Right.
is does not. Right? It does not solve this problem. What it does is just try to take away this edge that I feel. And in actuality, if I think about it for a second, there's things that nobody has to, you don't have to go, oh, I'm so grateful my car broke down, right? I mean, there doesn't have to be this positive spin on it, but you can also say, yeah, my car has a problem and that's not the end of the world. It's okay. I can handle my car breaking down without needing to, I can handle this discomfort and feel a little bit, ugh, a little bit frustrated about the fact that I have to deal with this without needing to escape that feeling. That's okay. I can handle this, right?
That's exactly it. It's, leaning into those feelings and feeling that discomfort, because that's part of life.
Right.
Um, and then you gain confidence, or at least I gained confidence that, okay, right, you're addressing your problem. It doesn't mean it's going away, but you're gonna figure it out. Might take
Mhm.
a couple steps. It's probably gonna be a little uncomfortable, but then, it's just, as you address other things in your life, you're gonna remember that you've got that skill set,
Mhm.
and that it doesn't have to be numbed or delayed or anything like that. And yeah, the thought work has been a big part of this, and that allows you to, just hone your problem solving skills too, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, I
Well,
think,
but you also had a loss over this year.
right,
Yeah, and it was one of your pets, and it was really a hard, right? I mean, all of us who've lost a pet, we understand that sadness. You know what I'm saying? And you had that skill set where you didn't want to try to just drink that away, right? That was I mean,
exactly,
you needed to just, I mean, allow that sadness to be there. I think it's scary when we have big emotions like that, like, ugh, I don't want to have to, right? But you did
right,
it and you were capable of doing it.
exactly, right. That's what it allows you to, um, you know, feel those feelings, because you need to. Otherwise, you're just going to feel them later, or
Hmm.
you're going to express them in another way, or maybe a bad way. And bad's not a good, but a less constructive way. So yeah, again, yeah, this approaching alcohol this way has allowed me to address a few challenging situations that have occurred over the course of the year, and they have not consumed me. And
Right.
it's also allowed me to then focus on other healthy habits that, already have in my life or that I want to new habits. So I think it also has helped me make alcohol less prominent in my life.
Yep.
And then I can focus on other things in my life and other positive things. And yeah, it just I feel overall I feel like this has made me more in line with my overall goals for my life and taking care of myself and being healthy. Um, and I feel calmer and more at ease, I think,
Yeah.
because of all of this. It's been another benefit.
Yeah, I think that I agree with you. The peaceful part of this, right? And that's why
Hmm.
we talk about having a peaceful relationship with alcohol, but it's really having a peaceful relationship with ourselves, a peaceful relationship with our lives, right? I
Right?
feel like
Exactly.
that's probably the bigger picture. When you were just first starting out, right? This can be really overwhelming for people. This feels like a really one of the things that I want people to hear too is that this journey hasn't been terrible, right, Julie? It hasn't been like
No,
you haven't hated every moment of it. You actually, I mean, got to a point where you looked forward to kind of just being what you are and who you are, right? Like,
correct. Right. Yeah, and I think a lot of the things that you said, in your podcast initially helped me feel comfortable with this approach. Um, you had mentioned your own journey, and that it wasn't quick. I mean, that it takes time. It wasn't like, oh, this is going to take a decade, but it's like um, you need to allow yourself time for this to happen. It's not a quick fix, and allow for small setbacks, and then take time to reflect on those setbacks. But that's part of the process, and
yeah,
by doing that, you're gonna make headway with all of this, and to be forgiving of yourself during this whole process. Like you've always said, like, yeah, if you go out and you plan for 2 drinks and you have three, then just the thing is to go back and think about what caused that. It's not to beat yourself up. It's not that all or nothing thinking, and I think that's what's part of your approach and your program that's great. Is it's very a safe place. It's very um, constructive work, and
hmm
it's realistic. It's a very realistic approach. So, that's how I felt throughout this whole situation. I really just felt really not sort of excited about it, and I
yeah,
felt like I joined your group and that I was with um, a supportive and safe community too. And I
yeah,
really enjoyed hearing other people's stories, and I benefited from that as well.
yeah. So, advice would you give to somebody who's just starting on this journey or is starting to change their relationship with alcohol
You know,
or what's
um,
possible?
yeah. Well, anything is possible, and um, it's going to be probably a better place than you're at right now.
Mm,
And to allow yourself time um, to make the change and not look at it as a quick fix situation. Again, to be forgiving of yourself and to set realistic expectations, and not have a all or nothing approach to it. Not like, oh, I just blew it, I'm gonna drink 12 beers instead, but just
right.
you know take it gently, and if they decide to kind of go with your approach, there's just a ton of good information. It doesn't mean all of it applies to you, but there's just a lot of good information out there, and learn. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the beautiful thing, Molly. You've provided us with all this great information from so many different angles that you did for yourself, and that's a wonderful tool. So
Yeah,
I get
got to keep learning that brain of
right.
yours. We call it our beautiful, brilliant human brains, and they can keep learning. And you want to use that to learn how to be at peace, right? Learn how to have a peaceful relationship with alcohol, however that looks. So you stick mostly to low risk limits now, correct?
I do. I
Yeah.
do. And the other thing, and I actually, it was funny because like I was thinking about the things that were so beneficial to me, and I think there was a podcast with you and Elizabeth Benton, and it was about Elizabeth was saying kind of just basically take that step. I mean,
Yeah.
learn, get information, but just you start. And I thought that was one of the that was just a really good piece of advice too. Just, like me, I waited and that was okay. But like just taking that first step is so critical. And I just listened to that episode again yesterday. I was like, I need to hear that again.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go back and listen to some of the early episodes. So, you
Nice.
know,
I love it.
take
Yeah.
take that first step. It's maybe scary, but you know what? You're going in the right direction.
Oh, great words. I love it. Julie, you are a superstar. You are so awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show and for just, sharing just humble words with people because they resonate. And you've really, you've taken that habit that really increased over COVID, which is so typical for so many people, and you've just changed it completely. And, I know that now you just don't look at alcohol in the same way at all. And I love the fact that you said you wanted it to be, it's become a minimal part of your life, which is why we are the alcohol minimalists, right? We don't, it's
Right.
just no longer a daily part of our lives. It's no longer it doesn't consume our thoughts the way that it was. And we are able to take on and do the other important things in life that we want to be doing, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, well, my friend, have a wonderful day out there in the beautiful fall of Ohio. I bet anything there is something pumpkin flavored in your life today. Am I right?
You are right on the money.
Julie is a fellow pumpkin spice lover, and I am so grateful for that. You have a great day.
Thank you, Molly.
Hey, all, just a quick break in the show to talk with you for a minute about Sunnyside. It's fall and it's time for tailgaters and holiday parties on the horizon. There is never a better time than right now to put a mindful plan into place. And Sunnyside is my recommendation for how you can really use a tool that provides a way to track your drinks, measure your progress, and really uses proven behavior change techniques to create lasting habit change. The thing is, you can reduce your drinking by 30% in the first 30 days with Sunnyside. And you can save over $50 a month, cut out 2,500 calories out of your diet, and these are just based on average results. I know that people that I talk to and people that I work with are using Sunnyside and getting great results. If you'd like to find out if it will work for you, go to www.sunnyside.co/minimalist to get started on a free 15-day trial today. Hey, Bruce, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Alcohol Minimalist podcast. I know that you have been around my work for a while now, and this was just an idea that I had in terms of talking to a few of you that have been involved in the Facebook group, that I know have read the book, that I know have been doing the work and have had really great results. And I wanted to share your stories with my listeners because sometimes I think people get this idea that, oh yeah, well, you did all this, Molly, you trained yourself, you read all these things, you took all these coaching courses, and of course you took all this information, and yeah, so you figured it out. But I can't do it. I couldn't possibly. That's going to take way too long. It's going to be way too hard. And even though you say that it's possible for me, I'm not really sure that I can buy into it. I don't really see it for myself. And so I'm hoping that by sharing your collective stories that people can find themselves in your word and realize that they're quite capable of doing it too. So
hmm
thank you for being here.
Definitely, and thanks for having me. It's been great to be have this opportunity to talk with you today. So,
Awesome. Awesome. Well, tell me a little bit about kind of when you decided to, when you found this work, when you found me, and when you found this kind of idea, what was your drinking habit looking like? What was going on for you? Why were you even investigating, deciding to change your drinking habits?
so for me, I mean, it was a habit that just became kind of arduous and was no longer self-serving, and it mostly revolved around, weekends and social gatherings with friends and such, and probably stemmed, I would say, as early as my undergraduate college days, and sort of just kind of carried forward, into the next phase of adulthood. And it didn't really seem to matter what the occasion was. And this is especially true in my state here in the state of Wisconsin, that, it could be a sporting event or intramural league sports, birthdays, what have you. It always revolved around alcohol.
Yeah.
And it was almost this kind of something that was assumed that, there's going to be alcohol at this event, and we're going to, everybody's going to partake in it without question or whatnot. So it was almost like it's like a culture or whatnot. And I was just looking to try and change that. I mean, in the back of my mind, I always knew this is not a healthy thing, especially if, drinking to excess and whatnot at some of these select events, like tailgating and things like that. But it was something that I just wanted to improve upon. And it ultimately, when I first started trying to do that, it was just kind of the habit would always return. I didn't really like commit to doing something different. So there was no
Right.
different changes in
Right.
in the habit, right? If you don't do
Right.
something different, why would you expect something to change? So I started branching out and like saying, I can do research, from my background in engineering and my degrees and things like that. I'm a student of science, so to speak, kind of like yourself.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to see, there's got to be resources out there. And I stumbled upon, actually, stumbled upon the Facebook group first,
Oh,
the
wow.
Alcohol Minimalist group there. And I think change your habits around alcohol, I think is some of the keywords or whatever that I searched on.
Yeah.
And I started reading about that, and I started reading some posts about people. And then at some point I came across a post from somebody that mentioned your book. So
Uh-huh.
I went and looked up the book on Amazon and saw some really great reviews. And I generally read reference books on electrical engineering most often. So this is a little bit of different change of pace for me. So I decided to buy the book, and I said, I gotta change something if I want to make changes. So I said, I'll try this and see where it goes. And ultimately, um, when I started reading the book and listening to the podcast, I mean, it was just an eye-opening experience for me. So
Yeah. Oh, wow. I love that. I love that. And I
yeah.
love the fact that it's interesting. More and more people are finding the Facebook group first and have no clue that there's a podcast or a book or anything else behind it. So it's interesting to see that that was your journey too. So,
Hmm.
but I'm glad. I know that I remember when you bought the book and if I remember correctly, you posted about that in the Facebook group because you were like, you got the book and you were headed off to one of your like weekend warrior kind of getaways with your friends that was going to, and like you showed a picture of all the beers that were there from all of the other guys.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was kind of a twofold approach. The place that you're talking about that I usually go to, our cottage, is a place where there really isn't any internet on there. So I figured, well, this is going to be my best chance to start reading a book, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I can't sit there and stare at my phone because my phone doesn't actually work. And it was also kind of a good test for the reasons that you just mentioned about this was one of those Wisconsin activities that there was going to be a lot of alcohol involved. So I said, let's start putting some of these things to the test.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you did, and that was just like that was like I said, that was way back kind of at the beginning.
Yeah, yeah.
So you kept doing this work, you kept going, and tell me a little bit about what part of this approach. I know the science because I know
Hmm.
you've mentioned it to me before, and I know that's something that really resonated with you. But in terms of changing your relationship with alcohol, what did you see as really as a first thing that really helped you?
So I think the biggest thing for me was really changing my mindset and thinking around my own thoughts. You've said it numerous times in the podcast and in the book that the stories that I was kind of telling myself, I was just taking as this has got to be factual. And I started looking at it from a different perspective and just saying, challenging those thoughts and saying, well, what if that isn't true? What if I think about something like this instead? And it was just kind of like, it wasn't really like very difficult. It was just more along the lines of, you can have different thoughts about things to change the way you feel about things. And I was like, wow, this doesn't actually just apply to, wanting to change my relationship with alcohol, but this could apply to many areas in my life. And I'm like, instead of getting ticked off about something that happens, on the way to work in traffic or something, I can say, well, no, I get to listen to the radio a little bit longer that I'm stuck in traffic. And, oh,
Right.
no, I'm not upset anymore.
Right.
So
Right.
it was that was the kind of the foundational thing that I got from the book and the podcast, was that your own thoughts don't always have to be truth necessarily, and you can change your thinking, and therefore change your feelings, and obviously then your actions as well, right? So
Yeah. Look at you. You're such a good, you're getting A+ student work here. Um,
thank you.
so, um, and I know that one of the stories, I mean, you had, and you and I are both football fans, and we've talked about that on the Facebook group before, but you had a big story about tailgating and about how, like, I mean, you initially probably couldn't even imagine going to a tailgating event. And I know I get lots of people who say the same thing. I had the same thing. I could not even fathom like a Super Bowl party where I wasn't drinking beer. Like that to
Hmm.
me, like I was just like, what? Like, no. And then, I've done that. I've done, AFG championships during dryuary and things like that. And
Right.
no alcohol. So yeah. So what was that like for you?
Yeah, that's a really good example, and completely agree. Especially again, I go back to my state of Wisconsin, and it is not uncommon to walk up to somebody's tailgate and see two, three, maybe four coolers of alcoholic beverages. And someone will even if you don't know the person, they'll just walk up and hand you something, and you're like, I'm not even looking for a drink right now, but I guess thank you. So it's just one of those things that it's like it's assumed that because we're tailgating, because here comes B, that we have to do this because we're doing this event. So again, I started challenging that way of thinking and thought, and saying, do I have to have an alcoholic beverage in my hand, or drink 6 beers before we go into the actual event to enjoy the event? And no, it actually was making the enjoyment worse. You
Right?
weren't able to focus and pay attention, and you end up missing half the game. And it's like, wait a minute, how is this fun again?
Right. Right.
So I
Yeah.
started saying, well, instead of this big old cooler of 100 different beverages or whatever, what if I had maybe just one of something that I really enjoyed, and maybe savor that in the moment, and then maybe go into the game and order some food and another beverage there, and really just enjoy the activity itself. And again, that has led into so much more enjoyment for things by kind of taking that approach instead.
Yeah.
And it's been very, very beneficial. And again, it's changed the mindset of that particular activity, as an example, to say that no, you don't have to drink to excess when tailgating, and you can still have a good time and enjoy things.
Imagine that, right?
Right?
Imagine
Imagine
that.
that.
Yeah. I often say that this work is kind of a meta skill. So, have you found that to be true? And if so, how has this work kind of impacted the rest of your life?
Absolutely. As I alluded to previously there, I kind of said, I gave the example of, sitting in a traffic jam of sorts. When you start to challenge your thinking, or have a different thought about something, you really end up changing kind of your attitude and your outlook on things. And I have two small children, so sometimes they can get under someone's skin,
Right?
parents especially. And by taking that meta skill approach to those types of things, I think has kind of reduced my stress and anxiety for certain difficult and challenging situations. So it's been a meta skill that I've just been trying to apply in other areas, not just changing my relationship with alcohol as well. So yeah, definitely very beneficial in that regard too.
You say that I used to be like my life used to be really drama, like
Yeah.
I had all this drama around my life.
Hmm.
Like everything was really challenging. I had all these stories about how my life was just more challenging, was more stressful. You have two small kids. I had four boys. So I was like, hey, you know what? I claim it. I get to be the one, I get to be the mom who has the four boys who's always harried, right? And I carried
Hmm.
around this idea, the fact that I had four great kids who I really adored, that
Hmm.
that story was available to me, right? I could be grateful for that, but
Right.
I just like wanted to focus on the other stuff, which made me feel stressed out, which
Right.
then led me to think that I needed to drink to get rid of that stress, which, was how the habit manifested itself for me most of the time.
Yep.
Not that I didn't drink at football games and everything else too, but I mean, that's kind of how it works. You start to create associations with whatever you're doing or in whatever you're trying to solve with alcohol. You create that association often enough, and that's, the habit takes hold.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. Completely agree.
Give me, and this is, in terms of being helpful for other people, because that's really what I wanted, was for you guys to come on here and share your your stories. For someone who's just starting out doing this work, did you ever struggle, or did you ever think this isn't going to be that easy, or did you just kind of jump in, dive in and go? And if what advice do you have for people who are just getting started?
So that was always kind of a lingering thought in the back of my mind, why is this approach going to be any different than the things that I've tried before? Because usually I'm pretty good at trying to stick to a plan and make changes on things, but would eventually revert back to those old habits. So I thought, what could be different about this approach? And I guess my advice for someone who is starting looking to start improving their relationship with alcohol is really try and step outside yourself and take it with a positive attitude. And what I mean by step outside yourself is try to take a closer look at what you think you're telling yourself might be truth or fact, kind of like what I was telling myself. And you know feel free to like challenge those thoughts and things like that, especially in those difficult situations where you're making the look make positive changes in your life. Whether it's changing your relationship with alcohol or something else in life. I think everybody has that capability deep down and the potential, to do this type of work, with some dedicated effort and repetition. That was also kind of key for me, is um, challenging my own thoughts and kind of making that a new habit, something that was improved,
Hmm.
just a different way of thinking, and kind of not just applying that to every time I want to drink, or I'm at a social activity or something like that. It was more about just doing it regularly in life, and all of a sudden you'll realize that becomes your new good habit.
Right.
So in my
Right.
opinion, again, in my experience too. So
Yeah. And just real quickly, did you have plans in place? Did you make plans for drinking alcohol? I mean, did you put a plan in place when you were first starting out on this process? Did you like say, okay, I'm going to, I'm going to have this, that, whatever. Like I talk a lot about making a plan ahead of
mhm.
time.
Yes, that's a really good point too. And that was definitely something that was important too. It wasn't just kind of going into, well, I'll figure it out when I get to this place, that
Right.
I'll figure out how much I'm going to drink then, because that doesn't work, or it didn't work for me anyways. And yeah, part of the twofold approach that I guess I took here that I can add is, I signed up for, at that time it was called Cutback Coach. And now I
Right. Right.
think
Right.
it's
Yeah.
called
Sunny
called
side.
Sunnyside. And I
Yep.
said, again, I'm making changes here. I'm gonna actually put some effort into this and be proactive. And I thought that was a really good way to kind of go in with a plan and saying, well, here's another situation where there's going to be alcohol and stuff. Uh, Sunnyside and or Cutback Coach was able to help kind of keep me accountable in that regard. So that helped drive my plan
Yeah.
for planning for certain events like that. So yeah, that definitely was something that was helpful going into it. But then again, that thought work that kind of went in parallel with it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I always say that. I mean, you can have the plan in place, but if you don't, back it up by learning how to manage your mind, the plan is
mhm,
just is a plan, and that eventually will become is more the plan in the beginning, especially can often be driven by willpower, and that's not what we
exactly.
want, right? So we
Yeah.
want to make sure that we're challenging our thoughts and becoming a better thinker. So, which is really
Yep.
kind of what you did. So,
Yep. And I even more so to that too. I even, and listening to the podcast and the book built in some contingency to that plan as well, just to say, well, maybe if the event ends up going later than usual, here's going to be, my plan just in case. So kind of a plan B, if you will. So it was always good to have that kind of in your back pocket. But again, taking that proactive approach to just about, everything that you could in those social activities.
Yeah. Well, I just appreciate you sharing all of this with the listeners. I know that it's football season right now, so I know you're busy going to, doing some tailgating and enjoying as much as you can. For all of you listening, poor Bruce is a Green Bay Packers fan, and so it hasn't been the best of seasons yet.
Correct. Yep.
And but that's okay because I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, and everybody knows it hasn't been the best of years for us either. So, but I really appreciate you coming on, Bruce. I really appreciate you sharing just your experience. And what I really want you all to hear, folks, is that this is totally possible. This is totally doable for you. Really, just get involved with the tools, get involved with the learning, get involved with the Facebook group, right?
Absolutely.
And you can get this kind of success too. Thanks,
Well, thank
Bruce.
you so much, Molly. Appreciate you having me on.
Thank you. And again, just appreciate it. Thank you for listening to the Alcohol Minimalist podcast. This podcast is dedicated to helping you change your drinking habits and to create a peaceful relationship with alcohol. Use something you learned in today's episode and apply it to your life this week. Transformation is possible. You have the power to change your relationship with alcohol now. For more information, please visit me at www.mollywatts.com.